Opening the doors on the biggest advent calendar in beds, hearts and bucks.
Ho, ho, ho.
Let's see who's behind door number 23. Sophie Solaria.
My best toy would be the Barbie caravan. What I loved about it was the fact that it came with a Barbie and a Ken. I'd used to dress up the Barbie and I'd dress up the Ken, and sometimes if there wasn't enough Ken's clothes, he would wear Barbie's clothes, and it would be hours of fun for a person.
Building up to Christmas. Only 2 days to go with BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good evening. It's Tuesday. We're going to talk business and finance, but we've got three great guests. They're a lot of fun too, so we'll have an interesting hour here, I promise you. Joining me around the table tonight, Jasper Gilder. Welcome back, Jasper.
Thank you.
Jasper runs a trading and development consultancy from Hertfordshire, and you also run a specialist car holiday business.
Correct.
And we'll talk about that, because I love the idea of going on holiday with a car.
Well, it's a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah, don't tell my wife. John Follett is from St Albans, based at luxury car dealers Romans of St Albans.
Good evening.
Cars will be a major feature of the programme this evening.
Can't wait.
Jonathan Davis is our third and final panellist, economist from Hertfordshire. His company is called Jonathan Davis Wealth Management. Always good to see. We speak a lot on the phone. In fact, every radio station I listen to, I hear Jonathan Davis, the harbinger of financial doom, and you're a lot of fun, but I think you talk a lot of sense, so I'll pick your brains.
I'll be my usual upbeat self.
So Jonathan Davis, John Follett, Jasper Gill, do you want to join in 08459 455 555?
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Roberto Perrone
On BBC Three Counties Radio.
Yeah, I did mention earlier on in the programme, because my listeners are very lovely, and again this year, lots of cards, but also I've been sent, I think, about 5 remote control cars, because people understand everything about cars, which is really good, all right? But I also have a thing about cheerleaders, and no one's to be one of those, or Dallas Cowboys. That'd be really, really fantastic. That'd be Christmas.
I think that's the thing you shouldn't be telling your wife about.
She knows, but,
Okay.
After all these years,
She knows now.
Yeah. Jonathan, now,
Yes, sir.
you have always been very severe on the economic situation, the financial crisis, and we'll talk about later on during the course of the programme. The figures suggest, take these figures, sometimes they're up, they're down. It's a different story every day. You're the one person who's not changed his tune in the last couple of years. You've never seen it as being clear-cut.
Oh, indeed, although the UK has no doubt had some reasonable economic growth the last couple of years, the problem is that the West in general has a great malaise. China's slowing down. The EU is obviously in an economic depression. And the thing you have to bear in mind is that the top 5% are doing exceptionally well. They're laughing. The next 35% are doing okay. The bottom 60% are going backwards economically. This is not a good state of affairs.
And you will know if you're in that bottom group. I say bottom group is the wrong expression to use. It's a horrible expression to use. I do apologise. But if you're one of those people where you're working, for example, and you're not moving forward, because if you don't keep moving forward, you will inevitably move backwards. You will know about that.
Well, for the past 6 years, the cost of living has been rising faster than earnings. And that is, of course, in itself dreadful, but it's the first period in 60 years that we've experienced this. As I say, the top are doing exceptionally well or okay. But, 60% of the population, the bulk of your listeners, are not. They're working harder to get basically nowhere. And it's all very well that we don't see a collapse at the moment, but in 2008 we saw a global economic shock. I'm telling you, Roberto, I'm telling your listeners, there's going to be another one. The problem is, and I'm not saying this with a smile, I assure you, what they did last time was they slashed interest rates to keep things going. They won't be able to do that this time. Why not? They're already rock bottom.
No, well,
That's what people
hang
need
on,
to get
but
to
that's
grips
the
with.
thing with Jonathan. You've never, you've been steadfast in your view. Other people, other economists have changed their attitude and they sort of get taken by the figures. But you haven't. That's why I always pay particular attention to what you say. Jasper, we haven't had you in for I can't believe it's over a year.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
me.
I wondered what I'd said.
Nothing. Yeah, I mean, there's still time. There's still time. Trust me. You're a training and development consultancy from Hertfordshire, but you also run this specialist car holiday business. Which one do you enjoy the most?
Oh, well, it depends what day of the week it is, really. So if I'm doing the training and development, I think that's absolutely fantastic. But when I find myself standing on the dock front at Portsmouth greeting people who are about to go off on a tour of Spain and Portugal, which I've organised, that's great fun too.
Because it's classic cars, particularly classic cars and groups of classic cars, and you take them on holiday.
Correct. What we do is we start off at Portsmouth and we put them on the ferry, take them over to Spain, and I organise the route, the tours, the hotels and all the rest of it, and they just have a great time.
See, my wife would hate that kind of holiday. I'd love it.
Oh, come along then, come on your own. We do discounts for drivers who drive on their own.
Any cheerleaders?
I could organise a couple. I know a couple
Really?
of girls who want to come.
I'm in so much trouble already. It's not even funny. John Folletta from St Albans-based luxury car dealers Romans of St Albans. And I said this before, John, and you've been in for a long time, but whenever I drive past, it's got the most fantastic picture. And I have to sort of shield my eyes from the beautiful vehicles. I mean, are they cleaned every day? They look amazing.
Oh, yeah. All day, every day, even in bad weather.
There's someone comes along and just...
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Starts top, bottom, bottom, top.
Because I've been looking through your stock list today.
Yeah, lovely.
It is, mate. I'm sure you'd like to sell a few more. But I mean, even the cheapest vehicle is unfortunately beyond my price range. But it's a rather nice Jag there.
Yes. Yeah, no, we try and
XJ,
cater...
very nice.
Yeah, no, we
2.7
do
TD.
try and cater for most people, but sometimes we get accused of being out of most people's price range, but, you know, we try and cater for everyone.
Can you tell when people walk through the doors they haven't got any money?
No, not anymore. Impossible.
If they come around, kick the tyres of the Aston
No.
Martin, is that...
Golden rule number one. Never judge anyone by the way they look, ever.
And do people... I mean, I've heard stories before from specialist car dealers across the three countries that, you know, one gentleman bought a lovely... Well, actually, no. It was his wife bought him an Aston Martin for Christmas. And that's what you call a present. I mean, you've got to say that's fairly impressive.
I need to have a word with my wife.
Yeah, well, yeah.
A very strict one.
Has that happened
Yeah,
to you?
of course. All the time, but yeah, quite regularly. Yeah, absolutely.
And is this someone buying for their partner?
Yeah, partner or you know with. Yeah, I mean I can't think specifically, but it's not an uncommon thing in our four walls. Yeah, people are buying presents for people. The most common one is someone buying themselves a present for having worked, especially this time of year when they've worked
Bonuses.
hard. Absolutely, and I think you know I'm going to have that Bentley or.
I need to have that Bentley. I need to have it.
Because I'm 35 and I'll.
35. It's shocking. You can join the conversation 81333. Start your text 3CR. Gentlemen, when it comes to alcohol, do we pay too much tax? Nearly 80% of the cost of a bottle of spirits and 60% of a bottle of wine is purely tax. Is that too much? Well, of course, we have society to fund, but is a lot of tax, Jonathan?
It is too much tax, and I would say to you, the problem is less about how much tax we pay, and actually how much the government spends on our behalf. I would say to you that if governments would spend less, we'd be taxed less.
How so?
It's quite
Because
simple.
they have commitments, of course, to the infrastructure.
Yeah, they've got too many commitments, though. They're in too many pies. They're obstructing business too much. They're regulating left, right, and centre. They're employing people doing non-jobs. There are too many senior executives.
Hang on, but this administration would argue that they're less intrusive than Labour, for example.
Yeah, well, as Mandy Rice Davis said in the 1960s at the Profumo scandal, they would say that, wouldn't they? And yet they're borrowing £100 billion a year from our children to pretend that everything's okay.
Okay. We hear stories, we'll see pictures on the TV news tonight of people shopping today. I think billions of pounds have been spent in the shops, but we are borrowing I mean, inconceivable amounts of money. Should we be concerned, Jonathan, about that?
In the very short term, no, and that's what the politicians are playing on. But I tell you, the maths don't lie. We are borrowing so much now. It's gone way beyond borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. We're now borrowing from Peter's son and daughter to pay Peter. And when our children, you know, we've all got grey hair. Well, actually, Roberto, you got less grey hair than all of us.
I think I this one here, to be honest with you.
You got too good a job, I think. That's,
Yeah.
with no pressures.
Yeah, of course.
When our children grow up, I'm telling you, there won't be a welfare state. For example, the maths don't lie.
John, do you agree?
It's frightening. Well, I do agree. I think he's absolutely right. I think he should be the next Prime Minister. But he talks a lot of sense, and I think he's absolutely right. It is frightening, the amount of money that is being borrowed. I don't know what. I mean,
it was supposed to come down. I mean, there have been cutbacks.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
well, that's what
happened.
there's more than one story, isn't it? It just depending on who you listen to. But just that 60% tax on alcohol. I was standing in a petrol garage looking at the price of cigarettes now. I mean, I don't smoke anymore, thank God. But £10 for a box.
Is that what they cost?
£10 for 20 cigarettes.
And most of it is tax. And talking about a petrol station, let's talk about the price of oil.
Well, we'll come to that in a minute. Don't spoil that. That's
All right, okay.
That deserves 15 minutes on its own. Jasper, the original question was whether we pay too much tax on alcohol. People have been shopping, but if you buy a bottle of spirits, 80% of that is tax. On a bottle of wine, it's 60%.
Well, can you imagine how drunk the nation would be if we weren't paying that
We're
tax?
pretty drunk now.
And we would be absolutely hammered, wouldn't we? I used to work for a booze company years and years and years ago. And the cost of production isn't very high. But I agree absolutely that one of the things we're doing is we're taking a lot of money out of things like that, which we're pumping into central government, who are then spending it on things that aren't necessarily of any great value to us. I mean, one of my pet hates has always been MOD procurement, where they spend an absolute fortune. I think there was a figure of £10 million to specify a new army truck. Was spent at one occasion over the last few years. It's an awful lot of money goes in waste.
What about a $6 billion aircraft carrier that we never used and we're never going to use?
It's got no aircraft.
£6 billion. That'd be 12 NHS trust hospitals.
This is the aircraft carrier with no aircraft.
There you go.
We sold them to the Americans. Who would have thought the Harriers would have been useful after all these years?
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Still looking slow on the M25 after an accident just before junction 25 for Enfield and the A10. Happened around 40 minutes ago now. Looks as though they've just reopened the inside lane and moved the lorry and car involved. Still slow though back towards Potters Bar at junction 24 with around 10 to 15 minutes of delays. M1's looking fine now around Hemel. Can't see any problems either way. If you're heading further north though, can see some queues around Milton Keynes. Junction 14 towards Newport Pagnell services. On the train Southern, no services now between Clapham Junction and Milton Keynes Central. That's because of a staff shortage. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Unwrap something different this Christmas with BBC Three Counties Radio. BBC introducing.
Hi, this is Phil Dell, and I've covered Simon & Garfunkel's song Bright Eyes. I chose the song because I think the melody is gorgeous.
Remembering World War One.
It never made a sound. The anti-aircraft guns were firing, but they hadn't got the range at all.
Susan Boyle in conversation.
The best thing about being Susan Boyle is being able to entertain people.
Hits on film.
All about music that is featured in films, not necessarily your obvious choice. No Dirty Dancing in there, no Grease Lightning, no Grease is the word.
For full programme details, go online to bbc.co.uk/Three Counties Radio. Unwrap something different this Christmas.
I can confess, there is a text here from my wife. I'm not even going to look at it. This is for tonight. Turn the phone off a moment. Jonathan Davis is from Hertfordshire. He's an economist. John Folletta is from Albans-based luxury car dealers, Romans Albans, and Jasper Gilder, trading and development consultancy from Hertfordshire, and a specialist car holiday business. And Jonathan, I drove literally past your house this morning.
Did you really?
See my accountant. I should have come in for a stiff drink before.
Yes, you'd be most welcome. Mulled wine we had this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah, 11 o'clock. That was the Livenses today.
Yeah, and good evening to I didn't realise my accountants actually listened to the programme. So good evening to my accountants in Hoddesdon. You're doing a fantastic job. I'll never be rude about accountants ever again. Not until next Tuesday. Panel, should we care about workers' rights? Apple has said it is deeply offended by a BBC investigation into conditions for workers involved in manufacturing its devices. Rules on workers' hours, ID cards, dormitories, work meetings and juvenile workers were routinely breached. The Panorama programme witness, in a staff email, senior Apple executive Jeff Williams said he knew of no other company doing as much as Apple to improve conditions, but he added, we can still do better. By the way, it costs around £28 to make an iPhone and around £40 to make an iPad. Should we care about workers' rights, Jasper Gilder?
Well, yeah, I think we absolutely should, but I think the way in which this story is being portrayed is actually quite interesting. There's 1 million people work directly or indirectly in the manufacture of products for Apple, but a very large number of them don't actually work for Apple. And if you look at the Panorama programme, which was shown the other night, a very large amount of that was devoted to the activities of subcontractors. So effectively what Apple does is they put out the manufacturing of quite a lot of their products to subcontract businesses in China. And of course, as soon as you put the part of your manufacturing into the hands of a third party, you lose a certain amount of control over what's going on.
But shouldn't they have control, given the importance of the business?
Well, I think they've made a strategic decision that says what they're about as a business is about innovation and marketing, and they don't really know how to do manufacturing very well. So they put the manufacturing into the hands of people who claim to be able to do it. But then you've got a real issue about how you actually control that, because there's a balancing that always has to take place between the price we want to get the thing at and the way in which it's produced.
Just you can't argue with the scope there for the money they make. I mean, if your iPhone 6, which I should imagine a lot of people will be hoping for Christmas, it costs less than 30 quid to make.
Absolutely, I agree.
There's scope there for profit.
Well, certainly one of the things that looking at the kind of stuff which we were shown on Panorama, the way in which the staff, particularly in the factories, were being treated is actually counterproductive. So what we saw was organisations which had got their foot right to the floorboards on the productivity pedal. And when you do that in an organisation, it's not sustainable for more than a couple of months, because after that, exactly what you see is what happens. Everybody gets absolutely worn out, and trying to expect people to work extremely long shifts in difficult and stressful circumstances isn't going to work. And eventually they'll learn the lesson.
John, what do you make of this? Do you think people care about the way...
They should care. I didn't see the programme. I meant to watch it, but I didn't see it. I'm guessing that Jasper's got it absolutely right. You can't continually push people to those extremes and still maintain the results. It's just not possible unless you're going to have a massive staff turnover, which is I suppose possible, but but no. I'm making Jasper right. It's a lot of the components are probably subcontracted, and therefore they haven't got their finger on the pulse, whereby maybe they should have or will have after the programme.
Okay. Jonathan.
Well, I'm deeply offended by the Apple executives' response to this, because in my field I've been aware of these issues, in fact, for the past 2 or 3 years. And I believe it's Foxconn, double N, in China, which manufactures the products for Apple, which are, of course, high brand, high quality, chic, stylish.
They've got people queuing up around the block to buy stuff. It's incredible.
And they've got people working 12 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week for slave wages. In dreadful conditions.
Allegedly, shall we say at this stage?
Well, it's all out there. It's all out there, and Apple know better, Jonathan, and should be fully involved with this.
Jonathan, why don't they? This is the most successful company one of the most successful companies in the planet right now. Money cannot be an issue.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Goodness knows what's going through these people's heads when they're drinking their cognacs over their business meetings, why this isn't a major issue for them, because I tell you, you can Google it. and you'll see hundreds of stories.
But is that why I'm I've always been a rubbish businessman, because I tend to think of the ethics. I mean, if you're making so much money, do you not deserve to pass it down the line?
That's how it should
what
be.
difference does it make?
You can do it ethically.
You've got a yacht. It's not as if they're going to take your yacht off you. They've got so much money.
Look, they're getting away with it, and I guess ultimately that's what matters in the quote real world unquote. They're getting away with it, and it's very interesting that here you are, here the BBC is talking about this because it hasn't been in the mainstream media until literally this week.
On the Panorama programme.
I mean, I think one of the interesting things is there's a real demonstration on the Panorama programme of a completely bankrupt management style and lack of understanding of how people operate. Right at the beginning of the programme, they showed Foxconn and said, well, we've had a problem at Foxconn with workers committing suicide, so what we've done is we've put nets up to stop them from, if they do jump off the balconies, to catch them.
Yep.
And it occurred to me that it might be more intelligent to try and work out a way of stopping them wanting to jump off in the first place.
But you would have thought that. I mean...
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And yet it is, fantastic products. The brand is absolutely supreme. And every time they launch a new product, which is every 6 months, on every single line, people will queue up round the block and hand over a lot of money. It is a unique situation they're in.
And if this gets out more in the mainstream, how obviously is this going to affect the brand? Obviously.
Not at all. Not at all. People will still buy the brand.
Well, you say that, but I can't immediately off the top of my head, but there are now and again there are stories which come out of high marks, high brands, which suddenly the brands are destroyed because they didn't keep their eye on the ethical ball.
And I'll ask John and Jess, but even, I remember Gerald Ratner's, of course, a lot of young people might not realise. Ratner's nationwide jewellery stores. He made one comment. I think the comment was he described his products that he was selling in his shop, made it very wealthy, as crap. And all of a sudden, Ratner's disappeared. That's not going to happen to a brand like Apple.
Well, the thing about it is that Ratner's was a medium-sized UK-based retailer, and Apple is an absolutely is one of the largest businesses in the world. I think it's quoted now as the largest company in the world. Well, how it compares to General Motors or not, I don't know, but it's pretty close.
It's double the value.
Yeah. So there we are. We've got the largest company in the world, which is actually subscribing to these kind of practices.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right. People will still go out and buy the stuff, but there will be an ever-increasing number of people who start questioning the ethics of what they're doing, particularly if it gets into the mainstream.
And I don't think it's necessary. If I was a senior member of the Apple management, I've always been taught to look after the people that work for you, with you, because it rubs back off on you. So, somebody like Apple, a global, phenomenon, they should be taking more care. And I don't think I just think it's totally unnecessary, the way they're acting.
Mark, who's walking home from work, says, evening, Robin Guest, I've been saying for 8 years there'll be no welfare state in the future. If you don't work, you starve, and that'll be when the money pot runs out, echoing what you were suggesting. The idea,
the maths don't lie.
Well, it's a worrying prospect. Because
of course,
we've relied. It's one of the jewels in the crown of this country is the welfare state. It has been second to none.
Politicians for decades, politicians of all colours, have overpromised and effectively underdelivered. And it's very easy for them to make massive promises because they can say, "Oh, we won't tax so much, but we'll still give you XYZ services." How do they do it? They've been borrowing forever. I'm telling you, the chickens are gradually coming home to roost.
Now, there was a solution to that, of course, because I was a student in the 70s, and one of the economics professors used to say to us at the time, well, of course, every time the country gets into trouble, Dennis Healy runs down to the basement of number 11 Downing Street, hits the big red button, and gets the printing presses going again and prints loads and loads of money, which is actually... you made the comment earlier on about, well, we can't drop interest rates anymore, which we can't, but we had quantitative easing, which is the equivalent of pressing the big red button in the basement of number 11 Downing Street and printing a lot of money.
Well, that didn't really work, did it?
Well, it resulted in us having massive inflation, which we didn't really want and which everybody says is a bad thing. But, of course, one of the effects of inflation is it does actually mean that the value of your debts is reduced. It's called soft default.
You can text the programme 81333. Start your text 3. See, I'm still looking at this card, John. This XJ Series 270.
You've got a buyer there, I think.
Do you know what?
Can you get him a good deal?
Of course.
Yeah. There are two things I do late at night on the computer. One is...
excuse me, do we want to...
No, I can't do it. One is looking up Dallas cheerleaders, right? And the other is looking at websites like John's here, looking at somebody's car thinking, how can I get into one of those?
The monthly payments are at the bottom.
Are they really? I always had to gloss over that figure. Can you convert it to... Well, you don't need it. It's diesel. Rob says, Rebecca, can you let listeners know that traffic going towards St Albans on the A414 from M1 Junction 7 is solid? Says Rebecca, who's just gone the other way. Has been a very busy afternoon on the roads. An earlier accident, air ambulance involved on the M1. Take it nice and easy. I know the supermarkets are still heaving with people struggling to buy enough food and drink in for that one day the shops are closed.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, it's looking a lot better now, but as you heard Rob mention, because of the earlier problems with the closure of the southbound M1, which is all back open now, the A414 is still suffering with queues from the M1 past St Albans down towards the London Colney roundabout. Then the A1081, that's the road from London Colney down towards the M25, junction 22. That's absolutely solid at the moment. Delays there 20 to 30 minutes to get through those queues. Once you're on the M25, clockwise is still a little bit slow from Potter's Bar. There was an accident around 40 minutes ago close to junction 25 where the inside lane was coned off, a lorry and a car involved. They've been moved now, all lanes back open, but still looking very slow on the cameras from junction 24 clockwise towards junction 25. A1M's cleared up now, that's looking fine. If you're heading out of Bedford, still some queues on the Great Barford bypass as you head towards the Black Cat roundabout for the Great North Road. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thank you. More from Adam in the next 15 minutes. Do stay safe and stay legal. You can text the programme 81333. You just need to start that text 3CR, followed with your message, and you will be charged at your standard network rate. You want to talk to the panel, Jonathan Davis, John Folletta, Jasper Gilder, you can call us 08459 455 555.
Across beds, hearts and bugs.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
6:30 with the latest news headlines. Here's Jane Killick.
A man's been airlifted to hospital after a crash on the M1 in Hertfordshire this afternoon. The crash happened southbound at junction 7 for Hemel. The man in his 40s was flown to the Royal London Hospital in a serious but stable condition. Police have named the 6 people who were killed by an out-of-control bin lorry in Glasgow city centre yesterday. 3 of the victims, including 18-year-old Erin McQuarrie, were from the same family. 10 other people were injured. 1 is in a critical condition. Politicians in Northern Ireland have brokered a deal to resolve a range of cross-party disputes. The draft agreement on issues such as welfare, flags, parades and the Troubles must now be approved by the individual parties. An army veteran from Dunstable is walking home tonight, all the way from his office in the City of London. Shane Wakelin set off this lunchtime on a 35-mile hike to raise money for struggling ex-soldiers. The weather for beds, hearts and bucks. This evening it will continue to be cloudy with rain or drizzle, becoming more persistent overnight. The strong winds will ease by dawn with temperatures down to 5 Celsius. Those are the headlines. The next bulletin is at 7.
Thank you, Jane.
On FM, AM, online and digital radio.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Let me just remind you my guests, who they are and what they do. Jasper Gilder runs a training and development consultancy from Hertfordshire. You also run a specialist car holiday business. What's the car holiday business called?
Drive España.
Is it just Spain based? You do Portugal as well?
We do Portugal as well, but to get to Portugal you've got to drive through Spain, really.
What a hardship.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
And do you supply the cars or people...
Oh, no. People bring their own cars there. So all I do is I supply the route and the directions and all the rest of it, and they bring their own vehicles.
So basically you all congregate somewhere and then you go to a hotel, you stop over, have a few drinks, nice meal, next morning you start off again and you do the journey that way?
Correct. Sometimes we stay for 2 nights at the same hotel.
A bit like the Mille Miglia, you've done that.
I haven't done the Mille Miglia. I've done a lot of... Do you know what? I've done a lot of...
We don't go that fast.
I did a lot of press launches, and one of the best ones I ever had was many years ago now. We met up at Dover, a cheap hotel. Well, it wasn't that cheap. It was a good hotel in Dover, near Dover. And I was given, for a couple of days, an Alfa SZ with limited edition cars, you will know. And basically we had to drive down to Avignon to celebrate the anniversary, and it was fantastic.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that the Alfa SZ was such an ugly car.
But one of the best cars to drive.
Absolutely.
They're worth more money, aren't they?
Oh, we were talking just before we came on, some of the prices on some of the cars at the moment and over the last 12 months.
Okay, well, let me just say that. What is happening to classic car prices? Because it's
gone crazy.
Rocketing.
Absolutely gone crazy.
Rocketing.
Can't get near them.
So what? I mean, as a point, I mean, if you had an old Ferrari, which is in reasonable condition a couple of years ago, you could have picked one up for like 20 grand if you had them. 20, 25 grand. Not from you, obviously. You're very dear.
I've never bought one for 20, 25, but let's just say
far less than that.
No, I don't know. I think you're probably looking at this time on the last 12 to 24 months. You're probably looking at a good, in some cases, I mean, some of the old Porsches have gone up by 50%.
Really?
I mean, ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. I was just saying to Jasper before we came on, some of the cars that we stocked last year have gone up 20, 30% this time last year.
So what's that down to, John?
Clearly, people have got, well, Jonathan...
Top 5%.
Yeah, exactly.
Top 5% all of a sudden are spending money.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking... I don't know, as an example, a 2005 Turbo, that's Porsche Turbo, that this time last year was retailing for circa 35,000, is now easily 50,000.
And is there actually a market?
It's happening. People are buying them.
Yeah,
people are buying them.
No, I've got a friend who's got a Ferrari Berlinetta Boxer which he didn't pay an awful lot of money for, and it's now 140,000, 150,000 pounds, and he's kind of looking at it and saying, "I'm not sure if I should drive it anyway."
Absolutely.
I mean,
and is this real? Is there somebody that would actually buy that car? And they're out there.
But it is like art, like paintings, like antiques.
Absolutely.
But do people actually drive these cars, or do they dry store them?
Again, something we were talking about before we came on air. Some do, some don't.
Yeah, it's both.
I mean, we know. I mean, we've never met before today, but Jasper knows people that. Who was it you talked about and said they didn't like getting the wheel arches splashed?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you get people who have cars that are garage queens, so they buy the car and they look at it and they drive it for 20 miles a year and MOT it and watch the value go up. And then you have other people who will come on a tour in a sort of 3 or 4 year old Ferrari, and you say to them, "You're not going to wash it down?" And he said, "No, let it lie in its own dirt until I get home."
But what's happened, of course, is sort of normal cars. If you've got, for example, a nice Austin Allegro in good condition, those prices have got. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've seen those prices start rising as well.
Yeah. What's an Austin Allegro? Is that a car? No, I mean, look, 10 years ago, classics were doing nothing, going nowhere.
Yeah,
absolutely doing nothing, and all of a sudden, everybody wants to be involved in classics. People like me really, where we were, at the front of the queue, we're now at the back of the queue, because there's lots of people in front of us wanting to buy these cars because they see them as a pure investment, better than having the money sitting in a bank. And, by the way, you can look at them and get some buzz factor. Yeah. You can also drive them and get some buzz factor. Why have your money in the bank? Have it in a classic car. Tell everyone you got one. Take pictures of. It's just a thing to do. That's it.
There is one gentleman who works in the city who I liaise with, talk to on social media, and his garage is quite something. He's got several £1 million worth of motor cars, which occasionally takes out for a bit of a jaunt, and it's just a bit of a laugh. But it's not a real investment, is it, Jonathan?
Well, it clearly has been a real investment, but these things come and these things go. We're not very far away from Brockett Hall. Everyone remember Charlie Brockett?
Oh, yes. A bit of trouble there on Monday.
And I don't know what happened on Monday, but is my memory serving me correct that he was actually sent down for
Charlie did serve some time at Her Majesty's pleasure
for an insurance scam with regards to Ferraris.
So I think the allegation was, if I remember rightly, the allegation he buried some Ferraris in the lands in the ground somewhere.
The point that I'm trying to make is that in the early 90s, I think I'm right in saying, John, classic cars went down the pan.
Absolutely. I mean, they have had a very. It's not all been plain sailing. I mean,
it's been staccato.
Over the last 50...
It's been staccato. It's gone up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, over the last 50 years, the prices have been all over the place. And even as supposed professionals, we've struggled to keep our fingers on the pulse. You know.
So how do you know? I mean, how do you price a vehicle? How do you know what the?
Generally speaking, when you're being offered something, you know, a classic is something that's over 30 years old. 40. So, you know, the way to value it is to look at what's the market at the time, what the prices are, who's got these cars. You know, if a fellow dealer or somebody that you know has got one, it's just an accumulation of information, basically.
Yeah. And if it's got celebrity
provenance is everything.
Yeah,
everything. It's sometimes more important than the car. You know, if it was owned by Elvis or, you know, Roberto Perrone or somebody, you know, somebody famous.
I don't think that would help.
You know, but if you know, but the car's a rust bucket. But it's still, you know, you can still bring it back from the ashes. You know, it's all about provenance with classics. It's and condition, of course, and what it is, of course. You know, a Porsche or a Ferrari is obviously going to be a lot more valuable than
an Austin Allegro.
They were not bad cars, actually.
Don't worry about Austin Allegro. All right.
Can I just say that I watched a film recently, and I'm convinced, I'm saying it to everyone, the best opening credit sequence of a movie ever is the opening of The Italian Job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's just a great film.
It's an okay film, but the opening credits is absolutely sensational, and if anyone hasn't seen it, Google it. It's beautiful.
And don't be confused, there are two versions. There's the Michael Caine film,
definitely
which
Michael
is
Caine.
just
There's the remake.
the cast is exceptional. It's not technically the greatest film, but it's just the setting, the music, the cast, the story. And then there's the American
You're
remake.
talking about the original, surely.
I certainly am.
Remind us what that was. I can't...
He's
You're only supposed to.
He's in a Lamborghini, I think he's in.
Miura.
Righty-ho. And he's driving across the Italian Alps through the tunnels.
With the music.
And anyone who hasn't seen it is going to Google it. We shouldn't really say what happens right at the end of the sequence. As you say, Matt Monro over it, Monroe singing over it. It's just sensational.
But the good news is that the Aston Martin was recovered and went on to a very long and very successful racing career.
Oh, right.
And then that film made the Minis. I mean, the Minis had a great career, but it made the Minis.
Well, all those cars in that film, all them, you just untouchable. Couldn't go near them. A Lamborghini Miura, for argument's sake. I mean, you know, tens of thousands, if you're lucky.
Well,
hundreds.
Absolutely.
Well, no, because the film is about cars chasing through the gold bullion heist in Turin.
Even the Minis now. Look at the Minis.
Yeah.
You can't buy a classic Mini for 10 grand. You just can't get near it.
Really?
I used to go to college in Dunstable with my friend Martin. He's old. That Mini he had was one of the ones featured in the film. I mean, that'd be worth a fortune now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot buy a classic Mini today that's anywhere near reasonable condition for £5,000
from the 1960s.
From the 1960s.
I was at a sale recently and helping a couple of guys sell some cars, and we had a 1962 Mini in there, which had been completely restored at phenomenal cost and was like it had just been in the showroom. Went for £7,000. Yeah, it's a lot of money for a car which was a bit slow, you know, when it came out and wasn't particularly exciting.
Because there is this euphoria about classic cars. It's not just a man thing. There's euphoria about classic cars because we buy with our eyes and people it's rekindle childhood memories and that.
Yeah.
But you know, when you drive these classic cars, you have to remember it is not quite. It's, you know, your modern family car is much better, much more comfortable to drive than a classic car. There are a lot of difficulties with some classic cars.
Often a lot more dull to drive than a classic car.
You've got to really understand them as well. Not anyone could get in a classic and drive it successfully. They'd make a complete pig's ear of it. I'll tell you a great place to go if you're interested in classic cars is because, as we're not, you know, nice and local, is the Harpenden Classic. In July,
Classic on the Lawn,
which has just grown.
Classics on the Common.
In July, first week of July, I think it is. Second week of July.
Because that was an event started by the Publican on the corner there, the Harpenden Common. It's sort of grown and grown and grown.
In fact, they've had to limit the numbers now.
Yeah.
Because it got so large that it was completely uncontrollable.
I mean, this July gone, it was just... I hadn't been for a couple of years, and the amount of cars and people there was just unbelievable. But if you're genuinely interested in classics and you want to, and there's an element of people that go there just to brief themselves on what's going on in the classic car world, because it is a different world.
And the owners are also friendly. They're all really nice people. They're all dead keen, and they want to talk about their cars at great length.
And I wonder why that would be. One text says, Mike, good evening. Mike, I'm impressed with your economist guest. That's you, Jonathan.
Well, he's obviously a very intelligent person.
Have you ever had much slack from people or feedback from people? Because
all the time.
Because and again, as I said at the beginning of the programme, you have not wavered in your view. It's very, very...
The big picture hasn't changed. We're in an era of very low inflation, disinflation, in other words, falling inflation from a low point. We might even be moving into deflation, which every listener will know we haven't had in decades. It's a totally different era.
Hang on, many people listening will not have experienced deflation. Just explain what happens when we hit deflation.
Well, for example, the cost of living falls. The cost of running businesses falls. On the other hand, you'll probably find that asset prices will fall, such as share prices and house prices. And, of course, government finances go absolutely out of the window because, as Jasper said earlier, the governments love inflation because it gets rid of their debts over time, as indeed it has for ordinary folk with their big mortgages 25 years ago. But when there's low inflation, anyone who took out a mortgage 5 or 10 years ago, they've still got the mortgage because it's still there. The debt is still there because it's not inflated away.
And for some people, there is this assumption, this belief that house prices, property prices, will always only go up. You know, your house is your nest egg. Yeah. It's only going to go one way north. And
so naive.
Yeah.
The other thing with deflation... the other thing with deflation as well is that it really dampens down consumer demand because people look at consumer durables in the shops and think, well, hang on a sec, do I buy it now or do I wait for 6 months and see if the prices come down?
I'm sorry, Jasper, I have to disagree with you. That is the consensus view that's given out, frankly, by the BBC all the time. I don't buy that at all. How many televisions have we delayed not buying because they'd be cheaper 2 years later, which, of course, they always are? Same for computers, same for fridges, and what about cars? We buy cars. We know they're going to be cheaper, unless they're a classic car and an investment. No. We do not defer purchases because they're going to be cheaper. It's simply not true.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio. My guest tonight, Jonathan David, John Folletta and Jasper Gilder.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
To be some delays between Bishop Stortford and Sawbridgeworth at the moment on the A1184. That's St James's Way. It's blocked at the moment by a bus which has broken down near to Spellbrook Lane East. Hemel Hempstead, the A414, still looking a little bit slow as you head away from the M1 towards St Albans. That's after an accident on the M1 earlier, so very heavy on the A414 between the M1 St Albans and Hatfield. And anti-clockwise M25. That looks like something's going on as you approach Potters Bar at junction 24. Very slow there on the cameras. Maybe there's been an accident or breakdown, but if you're stuck on the M25 anti-clockwise, delays at junction 24, do get in touch and update us if it's safe and legal. Adam Moore, BBC Three Counties Radio.
The next travel bulletin is in 15 minutes.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Christmas Day on BBC Three Counties Radio.
From 6.
The BBC Three Counties Radio Carol Concert.
Welcome to St Mary's. Happy Christmas.
From 7.
Gareth Lloyd.
With the brightest and best way to start your Christmas day.
From 10.
Sophie Solaria.
I'll be meeting Father Christmas, talking board games and finding out about bearded baubles.
From 1.
The BBC Three Counties Radio Carol Concert.
From 2.
Justin Dealey.
With fantastic music and the man himself, Father Christmas.
From 6.
Bernie Keith.
From 7.
Mark Forrest.
Oh, oh, oh.
Christmas Day on BBC Three Counties Radio.
It's 13 and a half minutes to 7. Gentlemen, today was one of the busiest shopping days of the year. In fact, every day. I think it was today between 1 and 2, it was so-called the Golden Hour, Black Friday, Super Sunday, you name it, and the media comes up with a term for it. Do you understand why people lose the plot, Jasper, come to Christmas? They go shopping and they just spend like it's one day.
Yeah, it is. It's one day, but we have this huge business which has grown up around it. Yeah, I mean, the Christmas decorations start coming out in the department stores around August time, and it's a bit like, it's the big spend fest during the course of the year, and we have to make sure that all our children are satisfied and get the presents that they really want to give ourselves a nice, quiet and easy time. And, we've developed this kind of economic thing that says we've got to go out and spend a lot of money and we've got to give people lots of presents, and then we normally catch a cold in January.
Is that always the case, catching the cold, a bit of a fever in January?
Well, I think I was talking more of an economic cold, actually. But, I mean, the funny thing is, we were reflecting today on the amount of money that had been spent on food, and my wife said to me, well, we won't have to buy much in January, will we? Because we appear to have done all January's food shopping already.
See, I don't get it. I mean, it's just, you go try and go food shopping, and people, you look at the trolleys, and it's just... They're all overrun. Thinking it's one. How much can anyone eat, John? I mean, it's one.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's well, I just can't find any other word except ridiculous. But I think what it is people get dragged in by other people. They see trolleys in supermarkets over full, and it's just. I think it's just people getting sucked in. And invariably it's people doing things they can't afford, and then we'll worry about it later. And
does that still happen? We've had a couple of years where perhaps you thought we were re-educated. I mean, there's your man. Ask him. I mean, from what I can see, it's people getting involved in things they can't afford, and it is do it now and worry about it later. Without any doubt. That principle, of course, will ring bells, Jonathan. We think it will never happen. It does happen, though, Jonathan.
Well, eventually. The fact is, we have the lowest mortgage rates in history, and they've been really low for 5 or 6 years now. So obviously, that has been the cushion that normal households have needed for the last several years. And there's talk of interest rates rising. They may do. I don't actually believe that they will. If they do, I don't think it'll be sustainable. You can't have higher interest rates in an economy which is so massively indebted. It's just, again, I'm sorry using the phrase again, the maths don't lie.
Hang on, but some people, some analysts are predicting the interest rates will rise at some point in the next 12 months. You don't see that?
Well, of course they're saying that because the Bank of England's been saying it, but the Bank of England's been saying it now for 15 months. And the fact is, inflation keeps falling. We're now at practically record lows of inflation at about 1% in Consumer Price Index, which is basically nothing. And on top of that, I don't want to get too technical, but the rate of interest that the government borrows, some people will know of the government gilt yield, it's at all-time lows. So actually, generally, interest rates are falling, and mortgage rates, for the last 6 months, have been falling from low points.
Okay. And we've got the price of oil, of course, has been plummeting. And Saudi Arabia's oil minister, Ali Al-Naim, has said today all producers of the cartel OPEC will not cut production even if the price falls to $20 a barrel. They're going to keep producing oil and pumping it out of the ground irrespective. They're going to keep up with the target of 30 million barrels per day. What are the consequences? I mean, it sounds fantastic. Oil down to $20 a barrel. They'll keep producing it. What are the consequences, Jonathan?
Well, first of all, of course, if this isn't deflationary, I don't know what is. It's the biggest input to manufacturing and one of the largest to normal household expenditure that there is. Yeah. So, of course, it reduces business and living costs. Well, hey, fantastic. Bring it on. I wish the government would stop introducing regimes to raise prices. I wish they would allow prices to fall as they would do due to globalisation and technology. Specifically, the oil price looks as if going into next year and beyond, it will stay quite low for quite a long time because, quite simply, there is less demand than there used to be, and there's more supply.
Okay, John, great news for you if the price of oil, for the price of petrol drops down below. People can rush in and think, I want that Bentley Continental GT.
To be honest, it's great news for me because I hate putting fuel in cars, personally. But
and how many cars are on your forecourt?
50. A big monthly expense.
Yeah,
don't worry about that. Oh, big monthly expense.
Good luck to you on that.
But the people that buy my cars are not worried about fuel. The minute somebody says to you, "What does that car do?" What's the MPG? It's not. That's not going to happen. Yeah, people that buy my cars are not interested. They're not. But for me, it's great news because I hate putting fuel in cars, and I just don't remember. When was it last so cheap? I just don't remember. Do you? I don't remember. 10, 15 years ago?
No, actually, it was about 4 years ago. We were down to about 118, 120 a litre.
Was that for a very short period, though, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, not so short. I remember the strikes or the riots, whatever. It was £1 a litre, and then everyone was getting het up about it at that time. That was only about 6 or 7 years ago.
But how long did it last? It didn't last long before it went up. It crept back up quickly.
Yeah, indeed. In the last few years, it's risen dramatically because the price of oil has risen dramatically. But isn't it interesting, going back to the taxation on goods and services, the price of oil on the world stage has gone down 45%. And yet, because of our taxation system, because of what governments are taking from us, the price of diesel has gone from about 138 to about 118, not 45%, not even close.
Jasper?
Well, I mean, actually, the price is dropping even further. I've been past 2 petrol stations in the last 24 hours selling unleaded at 111. So, I mean, I can remember the time when fuel was sort of 80 or 90 pence a litre, and that's within the last 15 years, I think. I think it's going to be really good if the price does come down because, echoing what's been said so far, it's a massive input to the economy in terms of manufacturing. I do a lot of work in the logistics industry, and a lot of trucking companies run on margins as low as 1%. So for them, it's going to be really good news because one of their major variable costs is fuel. And if that price comes down, then all of a sudden that means that they're a little bit more profitable, but it also means that the cost of all kind of consumables that just get moved around the country, that's going to drop as well.
Gentlemen, it's been a fantastic conversation. It's flown by tonight. But we have spoken a lot about cars and the car industry and classic cars, and I know some of the ladies saying, well, enough about cars. I'm just thinking of a great business idea, because one of your businesses, Jasper, is people meet up with cars, you take them on holiday, and it's mainly men.
No, they all bring their wives or girlfriends.
Okay. But it's not the wife or girlfriend bringing the husband, it's mainly...
Sometimes. I've had 2 ladies come together before now.
Really? Yeah. As a business idea, what about a company, and your business is... You take ladies around all the different shoe shops in Europe. And handbag shopping. No, you laughing, right? All the factories. That would work, wouldn't it?
How long have you got for a discussion about exactly how politically incorrect that comment probably was?
Really?
I've got to go home tonight. I think that's a really bad idea, Roberto. I think they should be accompanied by their husbands on a nice tour, and then if they happen to pass by a shop where something needs to be purchased, then that purchasing can take place.
You're so under the thumb, it's not even funny, just for you.
You haven't met my wife, have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't had the pleasure yet. Just think, men, holiday cars, but ladies, you go to the Christian Louboutin factory, and you see how they're made. You get to buy the product. You walk out. I tell you what, they pay a pretty back.
I'd love to see you walking out the Christian Louboutin factory.
Well, you know what? They make men's shoes.
Okay. I've never even heard of Christian.
Seriously, John, you haven't heard?
No. Christian?
Hang on, Jonathan, you've heard of Christian Louboutin?
Only heard of, I have to say.
Yeah.
Seriously?
I'm not into women's shoes. I'm not into men's shoes.
No, but
only the weekend.
Hang on. You will notice. No, seriously. You will notice when a lady's wearing a pair of Louboutin heels. Right. You will notice.
Well, I'm going to go home and ask my other half if she's got any Louboutin.
Don't ask her, right?
No, because she'll say she wants some, and then that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to sell
they're about £500. The cheapest pair about £500. But if you see a lady wearing a pair of Christian Louboutin, I was hosting an event a couple of years ago. It's a conference in a hotel in London, and the lady organised it. Husband, she organised a big company. She's got a big company. Husband works in the city, very big high flyer. And we did the event the day, and then even there's a big party, and she was dancing. But I said, I can't remember. Fantastic shoes, great pair of Louboutins. And she said, my husband's never noticed.
Lovely.
You know.
To notice.
Oh, listen, John.
You've still got it, Roberto.
Bring on those cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
I'm ready for them. I better look at my phone so I take the long way. Jasper, what does 2015 look like for you?
Well, I think it's going to be a game of 2 halves. The tours business is looking really good. Bookings are up for next year. We've got a lot of people who are very interested in coming on tours. We've already outsold what we did this year, so that's really good. Training and development, well, we're still in the middle of a recession so far as the average financial director is concerned. So I'm hopeful that the reduction in the oil price will mean that most companies will have a little bit more in their pocket to actually spend in developing their people. And that means the training market should start to pick up, because it's been pretty flat for the last 4 or 5 years.
John?
As long as we can get the supply, we'll be fine. Buying has been the problem the last 2-3 years, keeping the stocks replenished. That's been the problem. The selling hasn't been so much of a problem, but getting the stock will be. If we can, then we'll be fine.
Jonathan Davis, I'll leave the last word to you, my friend.
Z. That's the last word. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm looking forward to 2015. I always do. We have a steady practice. Always looking for new clients, of course. But seriously, people need to realise that at some point, because we're now, 6 years after the last global economic shock, there's going to be another one in the next 2 or 3 years, probably. And that, I would suggest to you, is going to be a biggie.
See, people might be thinking that's not... we can't possibly go through what we've just been through the last couple of years.
No option. Absolutely no option. And the idea that the UK is like in a sea of tranquility is nonsense. It's a global economy. We are I'm delighted to say, the most global of economies, very open, which is the way it needs to be. And yes, China is slowing down. The EU still is in economic depression, and it will be for a long time. America's doing okay. What I'm saying is there's something going to happen around the corner. Look at what's happened to the oil price that no one said was going to happen. Look what's happening to Russia and South America and so on.
Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a fantastic evening.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.